These are the top 10 plus 2, which by my Birmingham mathematics make 12, typical mistakes that I have read on forums or we've made ourselves that newbies make when venturing out in their motorhome for the first time. Back in the van. I like this, it's like a little mini studio. But of course under 6 metres long, I suppose it is a very mini studio. Let's get the seat right. I have pop. More importantly, I have biscuits. We have had some summer here in the UK at the time of filming this. But today it's dull, it's damp and it's windy. Just what the UK does best. If you're not new to motorhoming and you've been driving for hundreds of years in your motorhome, you won't need to watch this video. So although we do of course love you to watch all of our videos, this video is likely not for you. But for the rest of you that are still with me, I assume you are intending on buying or have just purchased a lovely motorhome, a memory maker as we like to call it on this channel. Well, here are some of the things that you may need to be aware of in the hope that you don't make the same mistakes that others do, and that included us. So we're going to crack on. And I've got my list and I've checked it twice. Number 1, why are my electric sockets not working? Well, of course, in this van, there's actually not many electric sockets in this van, but we have 3 240 volt sockets, exactly the same as what you would have in your UK house. But what some newbies don't understand or realise is that these sockets do not work unless you're on an electric hookup. Or at least you have an inverter. So in this van that we're sitting in now, we are parked at a storage site, and that storage site does not have electric hookup, or EHU as we like to refer to it as. Which basically means if I plug anything into those sockets now, today, as I sit here, they will not work. It is not a fault. You just need 240 volts mains, 240 volt even mains power to make them work. Number 2, the fridge. Now the fridge in our motorhome, like many motorhomes, works off 3 different power sources. Now ours has an automatic setting, so to be quite honest, we just leave it in automatic. It's really handy because it's kind of plug and play, fit and forget. But what are these 3 power sources? Well, of course, one is the vehicle battery, which we'll come back to in a moment. One is electric hookup and one is the gas. The fridge will work perfectly fine on all 3, not at the same time of course. But a common mistake that newbies sometimes make is they expect the fridge to work off the vehicle battery or the leisure battery. And the reality is it does not. It will run off the vehicle battery if the vehicle engine is running, but it will not work if the vehicle is parked up and the engine is off. So the only 2 power sources that the fridge can use when you're parked up at a campsite is either the gas or an electric hookup. Number 3 is leaving the Habitation control panel on when driving the van. Now we did do this once, only once. Depending on the water levels in the van while you're driving along, you may find that the Habitation control panel starts beeping, which of course can be very annoying. The control panel does not need to be on when you're driving the vehicle, so it's best to make sure that you've turned it off when leaving site or leaving on your travels. Now this is in no particular order folks, but number 4 is very important. If you've just purchased your motorhome, you should do a shakedown test. Now what is a shakedown test of course? Well, there's 2 important points with a shakedown test. Number 1 is to make sure that everything fitted to the motorhome, and let's be honest, there are lots of systems and items that are fitted to a motorhome. It's to make sure that they all work. But it is equally also important to make sure that you understand how they work. You don't want to be presented with a problem or something that's not working when you arrive on campsite. So it is always better to do a shakedown test. Now that shakedown test could be literally on your driveway, or if you can't fit your motorhome on the driveway, or like us you keep it in storage, going somewhere local. So worst case scenario of course, you can go back home if there's some kind of failure. It's just best to get to know your motorhome before you use it on a big wonderful trip. Number 5 I've got here is know where all your RCDs, which will be for the 240 volt circuit breakers, and your fuses are in your motorhome. If something goes on, or if something happens, it's bound to happen in the deepest of night, where an RCD will trip or a fuse may go, and you need to know where they are. So it is always best to familiarise yourself with the electrical systems in your particular motorhome, and obviously keeping a torch, because if everything goes dark and it's 2 o'clock in the morning, you'll be thankful that you packed a torch. Number 6, it's a slightly messy subject. Leaving the flap open on the Thetford toilet when you're leaving campsite. Open, closed, or basically just driving the van. Now, of course, if the Thetford toilet cassette happens to be empty, this isn't a problem. But if your Thetford toilet cassette isn't empty, and we won't say any more about that, the last thing you want to be doing is driving around the UK country roads with all those lovely bends and hills with the flap still open, because if you do, when you pull up, there's going to be some cleaning to do, and it's not going to be fun. So we always make sure, before we set off in the van, that the flap on the Thetford toilet is closed. Number 7, and leading cleanly on, if you pardon the deliberate pun, is sticking with the toilet, but this time it's ensuring that the flap is open when you are actually using it, particularly if you're going to be sitting there for a while, if you know what I'm saying. This is because if the flap isn't open, there's going to be a lot of cleaning to do when you realise that you've left it shut. So we ensure when we arrive at site that we leave the flap open. Now, some people do say, but they can smell the toilet if the flap is open, so they close the flap. That's fine, I get it, I understand. There is 4 of us in this van, and the van is under 6 metres long. With the correct chemical in the toilet, I can't honestly say that I notice anything. At the end of the day, when there are 4 people living in a van, you're probably emptying the cassette every 1 to 2 days anyway. So we just don't particularly notice a problem. So we leave the flap open while we're on site. That way there is no risk of forgetting to open it when we go to use the loo. Number 8 is triggering a silly, and believe me, it will be an annoying error code on your Truma heating system. You've pulled up at site and maybe you want to put the heating on in the van, or warm the hot water, or maybe both. So you switch on the Truma heating control panel and you tell the heating to come on. But are you running it off the gas? Or are you running it off a combination of gas and electric, because many Truma systems will run off a combination of the both. If you've got the heating system set to run off the gas, but you've forgotten to turn the gas on from the gas bottle, you're going to trigger an error code. And that error code is a little bit of a faff to clear. In fact, we'll do a complete different video on using the control panels in our van. So that'll be the Habitation control panel and the Truma control panel, so please stay subscribed to look out for that video. But basically it's just a good rule of thumb, even, when you pull up on site, turn the gas on, and then you won't be triggering any silly error codes on your Truma heating system. Number 9, it's know the dimensions of your van. Now, one of the things we deliberately did when we knew we were having this particular roller team van was we ordered some stickers. Now, I'll put a link to these stickers in the description below the video. It's a non-affiliate link. It's just to an eBay seller that we used that will print you stickers and will quote the measurements that you give them, which you then can apply. We've applied ours on the windscreen and behind the sun visor, so that you always know the dimensions of your van. Not necessarily so much for the width, but absolutely, of course, for the height. And that height, remember, needs to include any additional equipment that you've had fitted to your van. You may have had a TV aerial fitted like we have, so you do need, of course, to allow for the height of that as well. At the end of the day, you're going to be driving down a road one day and you're going to be confronted with a bridge. And if you're like me and you're a little tiny bit older, I prefer feet and inches than meters. It's just good to have a little label that confirms the height of your van in both feet, inches and in meters. A worthy purchase. We're already at number 10 now. This one, how can I say? I've enjoyed the comments and the emails I've received when I've mentioned this one in a previous video. It's to do with your electric hookup cable. We deliberately chose a 25 metre cable, which I know is going to sound to many of you, particularly if you're newbies, a really long cable. It is a long cable. It's an extremely long cable, but it is on a handy reel. The cable and the reel, by the way, is in our Amazon storefront shop, which a link for that shop is always below our video in the description below. So we chose a 25 metre cable because when we started van life in our Transporter T6, we purchased, I think, what the garage called a starter kit. Now, that starter kit included a 10 metre cable. And on the very first trip to Clanberris, Morris Leisure Group's Clanberris site, we realised that 10 metres just wasn't ever going to be enough. We couldn't park quite how they wanted us to park and reach where the electrical socket was. So I took the decision to do a bit more research, and I elected to have a 25 metre cable. Now, another thing that's important to mention about the cable is not all cables are created equal. There are cables for sale on Amazon and many different retailers that only have a 1.5mm thickness core. You need a 2.5mm thickness core, and we would not have in our storefront shop a cable that was less than 2.5mm thick. That is the standard that you need to reach to use your van. At the end of the day, you can be using some high powered stuff in your van. It is highly recommended that you have a cable with a 2.5mm core even. Anyway, because we chose such a long cable, I've had some right interesting comments, and we love all the comments, so this is not a negative to those people that have commented. We love every comment that comes to us. I guess we've had many comments that have said to us, you don't need 25 metres. I've been travelling around in our van for, I don't know, 250 years, and they've only ever needed one up to 15 metres. Well, I'm happy for you, everyone. If you've been using 15 metres and it's been fine, that's absolutely excellent. What I don't want to do is get to site and find that a 15 metre one is not long enough. Then, of course, some people will say, well, you can buy joining cables, or you can basically connect two cables up together. Yes, you can. I am not a fan of joining two cables up on site. I would prefer one cable to do the job. So we're sticking with the 25 metre. And personally, we would only recommend the 25 metre, but you will choose whatever you will choose, and I am sure you will get on with it just fine. For me, I want to make absolutely sure, or as sure as I can, that we don't pull up to site one day and we haven't got a cable long enough. The last thing I would say about the cable, and this doesn't matter how long your cable is, you must never not, that's great English, fully unwind a electrical cable. We store ours on a handy reel, and of course because it's on a handy reel, it would be quite easy to just wind out the amount of wire that we need and leave the rest all wound around the reel. This is not good, and it can cause the wire to overheat. So I always unwind the full 25 metres of cable, and then it's kind of just placed around the ground so that it can't get too hot being stuck on the reel. You must always make sure that you unwind the cable fully, everyone. That's it for the top 10. That didn't take long, did it? I reckon we're probably about 12 minutes into the video. So we're now going to do the two extras. Number 11 is packing. Now, there are 2 adults and 2 children in this sub 6 metre van, and if you follow this channel regularly, you will know that there is. 2 adults and 2 children need 2 adults and 2 children's worth of clothing, of course. And when we say clothing, it can be dry weather clothing, wet weather clothing, because as we've already said, we live in the UK, and nightwear, of course. So what we tend to do is we don't pack everything into one big bag. Partly because storing that one big bag is a little problematic when the storage areas in the van aren't quite big enough to take it. And partly because we've decided that it's neater and easier if you have 3 smaller bags, each for the different types of clothing. So what we will have is we'll have a bag for, I guess, dry weather clothing, a bag for wet weather clothing, and a bag for nightwear. And the nightwear bag we tend to store in the passenger footwell, because at the end of the day, when we're on site, we've turned the captain's chairs around. We aren't going into the passenger side footwell, so it sits out the way, but it's still easy to get to. by having the free bags, we're not fighting through lots of different clothing to find the item that we need. We just think that might be a good idea for you to try. I could not, and I'm smiling already, I could not end this video without talking about, ready, the blue tap. Or maybe it's a different coloured tap in your motorhome. There are so many newbie motorhomers that don't know about the blue tap. And we were one of them, everyone. We made the same mistake. So it's not a criticism to anyone watching this video. But what is the blue tap? Well, the blue tap is probably mentioned, without exaggeration, almost every day on the motorhome forums that I follow on Facebook. And the reason it is mentioned is people will set off. They haven't done that shakedown test that we mentioned earlier in this video. They'll pull up on site or wherever it is that they're staying, wild camping, whatever. They'll put the water pump on and they'll start realising that all that lovely fresh water that they filled up in their tank is pouring out the bottom of the van. Why is it pouring out the bottom of the van? The Truma heating system that we have fitted in our van has a frost protection switch. This switch will automatically pop open and dump the water that's in the heating part of the tank out of the van or out of the tank. If the temperature is, I think it's below 4 degrees, but don't quote me on that. It's there to protect your heating system from freezing over, which of course would cause it to crack, it would be damaged, and it would be an expensive repair. The thing is, when you collect your van like we did, this valve is normally open. In other words, it's in the sub 4 degree setting. In fact, when we had the habitation check done, the habitation check tends to leave it open. So you need to be aware of A, where it's located on your particular van, and B, how to close it. I will put a little inset video in now of how we do it on our Roller Team van. Effectively, you would turn the tap till it clicks and you would push the button in. Clockwise. This means that the frost protection is now shut. By making sure that this valve is shut, everyone, your fresh water will stay where it needs to be until such time that you need to use it. We ended up parking at Morecambe Beach on our very first trip out. It was a wet day, which kind of made it more difficult for us to spot that was actually an issue. We knew we'd got a lot of water in the fresh water tank. We sat there happily having a cup of tea, watching the world go by, looking across the sea thinking, yes, this is definitely the life for us. And it is. Not realising that while we were sitting there and running the taps, running the pump or leaving the pump on even, that the water was coming out the bottom of the van. So when we stepped out the van, yes, it was already a wet day, but I did look and think to myself, that's a slightly bigger puddle than I was expecting. I didn't think it would rain that much. Well, of course, when we got back in the van later that day, we had a warning beep from the control panel to say that the water was low. It was low because we tried to top up the sea at Morecambe Beach. That's it, everyone. If you are about to buy, or you're even just considering buying a motorhome, or maybe you've just picked up your lovely new motorhome, whether it's brand new or new to you, they all make memories, so they're all as good as each other. We do genuinely hope you found this video informative. We do like to sprinkle in some information videos on our channel to help people out. We love the feedback that we get when we make them, and we hope that we help people in the same way that others have helped us in the past. If it has been helpful, please consider giving the video a thumbs up. And if you're not subscribed to the channel already, please consider subscribing. As we always say, it is completely free to subscribe. I don't particularly like the word subscribe on YouTube. I wish they'd call people that subscribe to our channel followers, but they don't. Subscribers do not pay to do so on our channel. It is completely free. Please look for a link at the end of the video to do just that. Click on it, subscribe, and we'll see you on the next one. Thanks for watching.